Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, on Friday night, there's a game in the Mountain West with the Wyoming Cowboys traveling on the road at the Fresno State Bulldogs. Who do I think is going to win this game? Let's break it down. Now, Wyoming is 7-4, 5-2 in the Mountain West to start this season, and Craig Bohl has done a good job at head coach at Wyoming through the years to have them as one of the better Mountain West programs, and this year they're having one of their best seasons. And in week 0, Wyoming lost at Illinois 38-6, and that was a tough loss because Illinois is a really good Big Ten team and they were not competitive. But then they beat Tulsa 40-37 in overtime, and that was a good win. Then they beat Northern Colorado 33-10. Then they beat Air Force 17-14, and they escaped by Air Force. And then they lost at BYU 38-24. That was a tough loss because BYU is a decent team this year, even though they're struggling a little bit. Then they lost to San Jose State 33-16. Then they beat New Mexico 27-14. That was a decent win. Then they beat Utah State 28-14. Then they won at Hawaii 27-20. And then they won at Colorado State 14-13. But they were barely escaping against some poor Mountain West teams. Then they lost to Boise State 20-17. And that was a tough loss because they were really competitive in this game. They just could not pull out the win. In that Boise State game, quarterback Jaden Clemens at 30 yards and 3 interceptions and 26 rushing yards. He did not throw well in this game. He's a decent quarterback, but he's not a very good passer at times. He can be a little reckless with the ball, and he can run a little bit. So he's kind of a dual threat, but he's going to have to clean up on the turnovers. And he wasn't their starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. Andrew Peasley was, but he got hurt. But Jaden Clemens is going to have to play better in the Fresno State game if Wyoming's going to win. Running back Titus Swin at 212 yards at a touchdown and 17 receiving yards. He's a great running back for Wyoming. He's been playing very well this season, and he's probably been their best offensive player. And wide receiver Joshua Cobbs at 13 yards for Wyoming, and Wyoming just really couldn't get anything going in the passing game against Boise State. Then on the defensive side of the ball, safety Wyatt Eckler at 8 tackles, linebacker Easton Gibbs at 6 tackles, and defensive end Devon Harris at 4 tackles for Wyoming against Boise State. And Wyoming's defense has been pretty solid this season. It's kept them in a lot of games and helped them win a lot of games that they probably wouldn't have won, especially because Wyoming's offense has struggled at times this season. And on the Fresno State side, they're 7-4 and 6-1 in the Mountain West to start this season. And Jeff Tedford, in his second stint as the Fresno State head coach, has done a really good job at Fresno State at having them as one of the top Mountain West programs. And Fresno State's having a really good season this year as well. And to start the season in week 1, they beat Cal Poly 35-7. That was a good win. Then they lost to Oregon State 35-32. That was a tough loss because Oregon State is having a great season in the Pac-12. Then they lost at USC 45-17. That was a tough loss because USC is having a great season in the Pac-12 as well. Then they lost at UConn 19-14, and that was a tough loss because UConn's having a much better season with Jim Moore at head coach, and they had to travel all the way across the country to play UConn, and that was a tough loss. Then they lost at Boise State 40-20. Tough loss as well, because of the fact that they were not super competitive against Boise State, and that is who Fresno State wants to compete with in the Mountain West. Then they beat San Jose State 17-10. That was a good win because San Jose State's a good Mountain West program. Then they won at New Mexico 41-9. Then they beat San Diego State 32-28, and that was a good, close, hard-fought win. Then they beat Hawaii 55-13. That was a good win. Then they won at UNLV 37-30. Then they won at Nevada 41-14. And all those were great performances for Fresno State. And in the Nevada game, quarterback Jake Haener at 361 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jake Haener is one of the best quarterbacks no one talks about. He's a fantastic quarterback, and he does have an NFL potential future. He is a great quarterback for Fresno State. Running back Jordan Mims at 156 yards and a touchdown, and wide receiver Jalen Cropper at 136 yards for Fresno State against Nevada. Fresno State has a great offense, and they are really good at running and throwing the ball. And on the defensive side of the ball, defensive end David Perellis at 6 tackles and an interception, defensive back Evan Williams at 4 tackles, and defensive back Maurice Norris at 3 tackles for Fresno State against Nevada. And Fresno State has a decent defense. They have given up a decent amount of yards in some games, but they have been pretty solid, and Fresno State's defense has allowed Fresno State's offense to win games for them by not allowing other teams to score too many points. So who do I think is going to win this game? This game is at Fresno State, and that's going to help Fresno State because their home field advantage is pretty good in the Mountain West. And Jeff Tedford really has a solid team. They're a really good offensive team. Jake Haener's a great quarterback, and their defense is pretty solid. But what's the difference for me in this game is even though Wyoming and Fresno State have identical records, and I think Wyoming is a solid team, and I think Craig Bohl's doing a good job with this team, Wyoming's offense is really struggling right now. Their defense is keeping them in games, and I think that Wyoming's defense is going to keep this a lower scoring game, and I think they're going to be really competitive with Fresno State. But Wyoming's offense is really struggling, and they have struggled against some poor opponents in the Mountain West, whereas Fresno State has blown out those same opponents. I just think Fresno State has a better team overall, and I think Wyoming's defense is going to be able to keep this game close. But I got Fresno State beating Wyoming 28-21. I think Wyoming can win this game if they can make this a dogfight, a low-scoring game. Then I think anything can happen. I think Wyoming's defense is going to give Wyoming a chance to win this game, but I think Fresno State with Jake Haener at quarterback, Jeff Tedford head coach, they're just going to find a way. Their offense is going to score enough points. Their defense is going to play solid, and I think Wyoming's just going to struggle a little bit too much on offense in this game, and I got Fresno State beating Wyoming 28-21. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think Fresno State or Wyoming is going to win this game and why, and I will see you next time.